it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, your guide to all things geeky, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single Wednesday on this channel where we just geek out about comic books, and today is the last Wednesday of July, which means we have something very important to talk about. No, not that, no, get that out of here. I'm sorry, I don't know why Marvel insists on shoving that in everywhere. Okay, yes, that was a huge thing, it got announced at Comic-Con, it does need to be talked about, and I promise you, I am working on a video right now as we speak about it. However, I promise all you DC fans that the last Wednesday of every month on Comic Class is going to be dedicated to covering all the new DC Rebirth books that come out. And let's be honest, I think we all want to talk about that way more than the possible end of the X-Men Forever as we know it. I'm sorry, I was thinking about something else. What were we talking about? DC Rebirth, that's it. So, we're going to have two episodes today. The first one, this episode, is dedicated to talking about all the new books that came out in July. So, Batgirl, Hal Jordan, Birds of Prey, all those books are going to get covered in this episode. And that second episode that's coming out later today, or let's be honest, tomorrow, I know how bad I am at keeping deadlines, that second episode is going to be dedicated to talking about all the books that came out in June and just giving you an update on them, telling you if they got better, if they got worse, things like that. But for now, let's get into the new books. Okay, I'm going to start with what is probably the biggest book in the DC relaunch. Touché. I'm going to start with what should be the biggest book in the DC relaunch, Justice League. Their big superhero team featuring their biggest and brightest heroes. Is this book as good as it should be? Because this is a book that needs to be knocked out of the park. And I had someone on Twitter contact me and say that they felt that the Rebirth issue of Justice League was probably the worst one overall. And in all honesty, I can kind of agree with him on it. You see, the point of the Rebirth one-shots is to introduce people to this book, to this team, to these characters, and to what the next storyline is going to be about. And in all honesty, I felt they did that. I do felt that they did that, but it wasn't really special. It was, oh, that's the Justice League, they're fighting a giant bug in New York. Alright, cool. And that was it. That was all there was to it. It was a Justice League story. But, it was a run-of-the-mill Justice League story. I didn't hate it. I just felt it was okay. There wasn't really anything there that grabbed me. I mean, the only thing really different about this one is you saw the League dealing with the fact that their Superman was dead, and now suddenly this older Superman has appeared, and he wants to help out, and they're like, what do we do about, he looks just like our Superman, what's the deal with this? Which, is something that they should explore, and I feel like that is going to come up later in the series, but in this one book, aside from that, there wasn't really anything different to it. There wasn't really anything unique about it. I did like seeing Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz flying off to help the Justice League, and Simon Baz was like, they tried to arrest me the first time that they saw me, right? And she's like, yeah, well, I tried to kill them the first time that I met them, so we both kind of have a mixed up history with these guys. And I was like, that's actually kind of fun. I actually kind of enjoy the fact that these two Green Lanterns kind of feel like the odd men out. So that's kind of a nice thing to add in there. So yeah, the Rebirth one-shot, I felt like it introduced us to the team, which is the whole point of the Rebirth one-shots, I'll give it that, but aside from that, there wasn't really anything of interest there. There wasn't anything really to grab me. However, I do have to say, issue number 1 of the actual series was a big step in the right direction, because that issue showed a huge, massive threat. Every single tectonic plate on the planet all became activated at once. So there were earthquakes just tearing the entire planet apart. You saw tsunamis blowing countries away. And you saw the entire League going into action. And you saw every single member of the League using their own unique skills and abilities to help save people. And I love seeing that. In fact, there was a moment in which Cyborg had to stop a train, and he actually was talking about like it was a football play. I was like, yes, one of the things I hate about Jeff Johns' run is that he treated Cyborg just like the tech guy, just like, I'm plugged into these computers, beep boop, I have no personality. But that's not all that there is to Cyborg. Cyborg, before he became a superhero, was an all-star football player, so yeah, a little bit of that would be going through his mind, so I was enjoying seeing that. I really enjoyed seeing the way that Batman was addressing the situation. I love seeing Wonder Woman just going in and kicking ass. Like, there is a massive 2-page spread that just shows Wonder Woman just destroying all these tanks and armies, and I was like, that looks damn cool. Brian Hitch is a guy who can really imagine a big, explosive 2-page spread. And yeah, even though he's not drawing it, he can still deliver on that. However, I will say, Brian Hitch, he knows action, he knows how to set up a panel. Dialogue, not the best at. He's still new to that, so it's going to take him a little while before he can really polish that up. I wish that they would give him an assistant writer for the meantime to kind of help him along the way, but aside from the dialogue just being okay, I do feel like he is actually doing a pretty good job on this book. The other thing that I will say that I really enjoyed was the way that he portrayed Superman. Because Superman, he still isn't really part of this team yet because it is a different Superman. But there was a moment in which Batman was asking to check in on him, and they were going, yeah man, he's just appearing everywhere and saving people. People are talking about him like he's a myth. And I was like, that's Superman right there. That's him. Superman is a guy who is so powerful, he is like a myth. He is almost like a walking miracle that just appears when you need him. So I thought they captured that very well. And I know many people who don't like seeing Superman captured in that way because they say, oh, it makes him too powerful. Nothing can be a threat to him. And to all those people, I'd like to say, write better. Superman is allowed to be incredibly powerful as long as you can write a good story around that. As long as you can come up with a threat equally as powerful that doesn't just happen to be another Kryptonian, okay? Sorry, that is one of those things I have always wanted to rant about, and it just kind of came up in that moment. But yeah, I think he did a good job capturing Superman. Yeah! Speaking of Superman, let's move into what many of you told me was actually your most anticipated book in this relaunch, New Superman. Now, this is a book starring a brand new character named Kenan Khan, who is a high school student in China, and one day he is selected by this strange, mysterious organization to be experimented on in the hopes of giving him Superman-like powers. And of course, it does succeed, or at least I hope it does, otherwise there would be no book. Now, I was very excited about this book because it was being written by Jin-Lun Yang, and Jin-Lun Yang wrote a book called Shadow Man, and as soon as I read that, I went, this dude needs to write Superman. Reading this book reminds me of so many things that make Superman great. Yeah, he should absolutely handle that character, and then DC actually gave him Superman, and I read his Superman, and it was actually kind of bad. I hate saying that. I hate saying anybody's book is bad, but it was not good. In all fairness, though, they gave him depowered street brawler Superman. Not exactly the Superman I wanted them to give him. So, yeah, maybe it wasn't entirely his fault. But this is his chance to turn it back around and say, no, I really can write Superman. Yeah, he kind of can write Superman. I mean, it's only one issue in, but I really enjoyed this issue. I really think that this series has promise. Now, I will admit, when the book began, I was not enjoying it. And the reason I wasn't enjoying it is because Kenan Khan was a total dick. An absolute ass. And I was reading it going, I don't want to follow this guy. I do not want to follow this character. He is so unlikable. But then you start to see little bits of his heart come through. You can see little bits of his personality. You find out what his home life is like. You find out why he acts out the way that he does. And it's like, oh my god, yeah, you're kind of a jerk. But in one issue, I was able to understand you. And I was able to actually kind of get behind you. Like, I don't approve of you being a jerk, but I understand it. And you're actually just a kid who needs help. And I really do want to see your journey into becoming a hero. So the moment that he actually does become a hero, and a hero who could have prevented something in his past that has shaped his entire character, not going to spoil anything, but as soon as you see him become a hero, it's like, this could be an amazing series. Watching this guy who we know is good, we know has the potential to be good at least, getting the abilities to be good as well, I think that could be an amazing series. So yeah, I am totally behind this series. Okay, let's move from a Superman title over to a Batman title, or as it's known over at DC, half of all their books. Oh, commentary. Zing. Anywho, let's move into Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. Now, this book only got a Rebirth one-shot. The actual series hasn't begun yet, but I have to say, out of all the Rebirth one-shots, this one might have done its job the best. Yeah, the whole point of the Rebirth one-shots is to explain who these characters are, give you their backstory, and then explain what the upcoming storyline is going to be about. This one did all of that, and in more detail than pretty much any of the other Rebirth one-shots. This issue explains to you who Batgirl is, where she is at the moment in her life, but also reminds you of how she was paralyzed by the Joker, and when she was paralyzed, she became Oracle, and she was helping other heroes, and she established her own team of the Birds of Prey, including herself and Black Canary. It explains their relationship, it explains how she went through an experimental procedure and learned to walk again, but it also sets up that there is a new Oracle out there, someone who is giving information to mobsters, and now Batgirl has to team back up with Black Canary one last time, and they have to go out there as the Birds of Prey again and stop whoever's doing this, but along the way they run into the Huntress, and the only problem I really had with this Rebirth one-shot is that it didn't really make it that clear to new readers what the Huntress's deal was. Like, it doesn't really explain why she's going around murdering people. But aside from that, it really does give you all the information that you need to know. Who's Batgirl, where she came from, the relationship between her and Black Canary. It gives you a reason for them to go back out again. It gives you a reason for them to meet up with the Huntress. It gives you a reason why this new Oracle is a problem. Yeah, this was a great Rebirth issue. I just hope that the actual series can live up to that. Next up, we're moving into Batgirl's solo series, and I gotta say, the previous Batgirl series, everybody loved it. People praised that thing so much. I have to say, I wasn't that into it, but I wasn't that into it simply because it wasn't aimed at me. It wasn't a book made for my audience. It was aimed at a different audience, and that's perfectly fine. Not every book out there has to be for my audience, and I was still able to look at that book and go, you know what? For the audience it's aimed at, this is actually great. This is a book that is perfect for that audience. So even if it wasn't for me, I could still tell that it was a good book and it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. And as I read this one issue, yeah, it looks like it's going to continue that. If you were a fan of that previous Batgirl series, this is the same. Except that she is now in a brand new location. She is now going to set out on a cross-country trip all across Asia, and as she goes from one stop to the next, she is going to pick up new lessons, learn new fighting techniques, delve into the history of new characters that she runs across. In fact, as she arrives at her first stop, she finds out about a superhero from the 1930s over in Japan called Fruit Bat, and she meets up with her as an old lady, and it's actually a really great moment between the two of them. I really enjoyed that. And she meets up with an old friend of hers from elementary school. Maybe it was preschool, I don't know their history. But she meets up with an old friend of hers from elementary school who they haven't seen forever, and they actually have a really good relationship. I really like the chemistry between the two of them, and they're now going to set out on this trip. Yeah, it was fun. It was upbeat. The new writer on this book still captured that same voice from the previous series. If you were a fan of that previous Batgirl series, I think it's just safe bet to say you'll still really enjoy this new Batgirl series. Next up, moving along the Batman train, we're going into Nightwing, and I was really excited to see Dick Grayson return as Nightwing. I enjoyed the Grayson book, but the entire time I read, I was like, I don't really want Dick Grayson to be a spy. You're writing it incredibly well, but I don't really want him to be a spy. I want him to be Nightwing, and I want him to be in the blue outfit. This is Nightwing. He's in the blue outfit again. However, the Rebirth one-shot, I don't really feel it did the best job. Like, if you had been reading that Grayson series, it did do a good job of explaining to you why he went from being a spy back to being Nightwing. However, I feel like if you weren't reading the Grayson series, that issue is going to be really confusing to you. I mean, I'm a couple issues behind on Grayson, and as I was reading it, I was like, even I don't really know some of the stuff that they're mentioning in this. So as far as introducing new readers to this character, I don't know if it did the best job, it more of did a necessary job. It was that book that had to explain how he got from here to here, and you couldn't really explain all the backstory at the same time, so I guess I understand that. However, I will say that that Rebirth one-shot did capture that upbeat, fun tone of Nightwing, and that's the book tone that this book should have. I almost said that's the book that this tone should have. Man, it's hot in here. Yeah, in case you guys don't know, New York is currently going through a massive heat wave, and me having two giant lights shine on me ain't helping. Anyway, back to Rebirth. So I thought that the Rebirth one-shot was okay, not great, but then when I went into issue number 1, I still thought it was okay, not great. There are many things in here that I do like when Dick Grayson is talking about his life as an acrobat and how that applies to his life now. It's like, okay, that's actually, yeah, you do that incredibly well. And there are moments when he is smiling and interacting with other people. I'm like, oh, that's Dick Grayson. That's the Dick Grayson that I wanted to see. But the whole point of this new Nightwing series is that now he's going undercover with this extension of the Court of Owls called the Parliament of Owls. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I get that's continuing a story from the previous series and you kind of have to do that, but at the same time, I would have preferred that this be a total brand new jumping on point for new readers. And also, yeah, I kind of just want to see Dick Grayson going around Bloodhaven again, just taking out people with a smile, and instead he's, you know, having to pretend that he is actually a villain. Yeah, I don't know. If that's something that you're into, I do think it does a decent enough job at it. But if you just want to see Nightwing be Nightwing, I still don't think we're quite there. And to me, the entire point of Rebirth was to see these characters being those characters again. So for me, this one is in the wait and see category at the moment. Next up, let's move into Red Hood and the Outlaws, or as I refer to it, the book I was least looking forward to in all of Rebirth, because the Red Hood is a great character. He is. That is an amazing character. However, I really preferred him before the New 52, when he was this anti-hero who was trying to struggle with who he was. And in the New 52, he was more just a quippy version of the Punisher. I was like, yeah, that's not, that ain't who I want to see Jason Todd be. I want to see this guy struggling with this a little bit more. I want to see the darker sides of his past. I want to see him, you know, kind of coming into confrontation with Batman. It always drove me nuts in the New 52 that Batman's biggest rule was nobody kills and nobody uses guns. And then you have Jason Todd right there blowing people away with guns right next to Batman. And he's like, oh, that Jason. Plus, I gotta be totally honest with you. I don't think Scott Lobdell was really handling the character that well. I checked out several issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws, trying to convince myself that this book might be good. Yeah, it never once won me over. So I read this issue, going into it fully expecting the worst. Damn, I was surprised. This issue was actually pretty good. Again, this was just the Rebirth one-shot, and I do have to point this out. All the Rebirth one-shots were co-written by Jeff Johns. So maybe it was him, or maybe this new series is actually going to be pretty good, because I gotta say, I really did like this Rebirth one-shot. This was the biggest surprise to me. This issue delves into Jason Todd's past. It shows you the first time that he met Batman, and it shows that when Batman found him stealing a wheel off his car, he didn't just beat him up and throw him in jail. He said, yeah, listen, you're on the streets, you don't have a home, you're desperate. Are you hungry? Do you need something to eat? And he takes him out to get food. Oh my gosh, that's the Batman that I want to see. I've said this numerous times. My Batman is a guy who beats up criminals, but if you're not quite a criminal, if you're someone that can be saved, he will do everything that he can to try and save you. That's exactly what he did here with Jason, and we see that journey that Jason went on. We see him becoming Robin, and that's a great moment. There was an amazing moment at the end of this book. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a moment between Batman and Robin. I absolutely love that so much. But in the present day, we also see him as the Red Hood. And yeah, he's not like the villain that he was before the New 52. However, he is indeed struggling with that darker side of himself, with what he has to do. And you do see him and Batman coming into confrontation over this. And then Jason Todd actually makes the case for, hey, listen, I have to be darker because there are places that you can't go as Batman. However, the Red Hood, he can go there. And I was like, that's actually kind of a good argument. I gotta say, I really did enjoy this issue. The only thing that I didn't really enjoy about it is that the big hook of this new Red Hood and the Outlaws series is that he's going to be teaming up with Artemis and Bizarro, and neither of them appear in here. And I was kind of hoping that we would get some kind of an explanation for why the heck they would be teaming up in this Rebirth one-shot. But if you want to start that with issue number 1 of the actual series, since that is the start of the actual team forming, alright, that makes sense to me. But yeah, I gotta say, man, this is hands down the biggest surprise right now of Rebirth. I can't believe I'm saying it, but kind of looking forward to that issue number 1. Next up is Hellblazer. Now to me, this is the book that had the most work to do, because Hellblazer, starring John Constantine, was a Vertigo series. And Vertigo is DC's far more mature and darker offshoot company. And yeah, ever since they took John Constantine out of Hellblazer and put him right in the regular DC universe, he hasn't been the same. I really liked that previous Constantine the Hellblazer series, but even it, I was like, still not quite the same as that old Hellblazer series. Still not quite the same. And the whole point of Rebirth is to come in and go, we're returning these characters to their roots, we're making them who they are. And I was like, yeah, how are you gonna do that without this being a Vertigo title? And I gotta say, yeah, just make this a Vertigo title, give it back to Vertigo, get him back into that darker world, because in the regular DC universe, there's just places that you can't go with this character, and it still feels kind of weird for me to see like Wonder Woman pop up in this issue, and I'm like, it's Constantine. Why is Constantine talking to Wonder Woman? I know that's just the old school Hellblazer fan in me coming out and speaking, but yeah, it is kind of weird for me. However, even though I feel this book does need to be Vertigo, I do feel like they need to separate him more from the regular DC universe. I actually kind of like this issue. Now, before I tell you why I like this book, let me just go ahead and clarify something, which is that I always make sure to look at reviews online so that I know how other people feel about these books. And this book probably had the widest range of reviews. This one was probably the most disputed because some people really enjoyed it and some people did not care for it at all. I'm coming in at about a B on this thing, and I think the reason why is because to me this did still kind of capture that feeling of Constantine. Yes, you cannot go as far with this book as you could when it was a Vertigo title, but I feel like they still captured like his snarkiness, which to me is a very important part of him. I think the art absolutely captured the tone of Constantine. I love that previous Constantine series, but I always had a problem with the art. Not that it was bad, it's just that it was very bright and sharp. Constantine shouldn't be bright and sharp. It should be dull and kind of gross and just dark and dingy. And yeah, this art kind of captures that. Also, this issue opens up by explaining why he had to leave London in the previous series, which that's something that did bother me about that previous series. It's that Constantine shouldn't leave London. He can travel around the world to other locations, but he's always going to live in London. That's where his heart is. That's where his base of operations is. That's kind of like Batman leaving Gotham. London is owned by John Constantine. That's his territory. But it explains that the reason why he left London in the previous series is because a demon put a curse on him. That if he was ever to set foot on British soil, he would have his soul ripped out of his body in the most painful way possible. Yeah, it's a pretty decent reason for why he would have to leave London, I'll give him that. But this book opens up with him returning to London and meeting back up with his old mate Chaz, which if this is a Constantine book, you need to have Chaz in there, so alright, kudos to you on that, that's good. But he says that the reason why he had to return to London was because, yeah, having his soul ripped out, it's painful, but his words, a failed meat salesman almost becoming president, that's a reason to get out of the country. And when I read that, I went, oh my god, John Constantine is more afraid of Donald Trump becoming president than a demon ripping his soul out. John Constantine is snarky, but he's a very unique type of snarky. It's very hard to capture his voice. The moment I read that, I went, that's John Constantine's voice. That's exactly the kind of thing that John Constantine would say. So even though this book can't go as far as, say, the Vertigo series would have gone, it does still capture his voice, so I gotta give him that. My only big problem with this issue, though, is that John Constantine also needs to be incredibly clever, like super clever to trick demons. The way that he tricks the demon at the end of this one, I was like, yeah, that wasn't really that clever. It was more you just running out the clock. It's kind of like a football team winning by just constantly taking a knee. And the last book that we're going to talk about, you can probably guess what it is. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Yeah, it's okay. This is probably an anticlimactic book to end this episode on, but yeah, it's alright. The Rebirth one-shot I actually did enjoy, but I'll admit the reason I enjoyed it is because, again, it was co-written by Jeff Johns, and when Jeff Johns writes Hal Jordan, you can tell he's writing Hal Jordan. Like, nobody else writes Hal Jordan quite like Jeff Johns does, and I love the way that he writes that character. So, I'll admit, I like that Rebirth one-shot simply because it felt good to hear Hal Jordan being written by Jeff Johns again. But aside from that, you know, it was an okay issue. It was there basically to explain how Hal Jordan got his ring back, because in the previous Green Lantern series, all the Green Lantern rings, they went away, along with the Green Lantern Corps, they all disappeared, no one knows what happened to them. So Hal Jordan, he got one of the first prototype gauntlets that they made for the Green Lantern Corps, but as he used it, it slowly turned him into a pure energy construct, and this issue is nothing but him using the very last of his willpower before he fades away to build his own Green Lantern ring, which is kind of cool. The fact that Hal Jordan now has a ring that is no longer owned by the Guardians, it's not on loan from Oa, no, it is his ring. He made it. So it's like, alright, that's pretty cool, and hearing him say the oath again like that actually feels really good. But aside from that, there wasn't really a whole lot to this issue. They set up the Sinestro Corps again, and the Sinestro Corps, now that the Green Lanterns are gone, basically they have stepped in and gone, well, we're gonna be the ones who enforce law and order across the cosmos, which, you know, that's never a good thing. But there's one thing that I found kind of weird, which is that I have not read Green Lanterns in a long time. I love Hal Jordan, but after Jeff Johns were on there, it's really hard for me to read anything else. He kind of had the perfect end to that series. He kind of had the perfect run on that series. If you have not checked out the Jeff Johns Green Lantern run and you want to read a Green Lantern book, that is the one to read. There is no other answer to that question. It is Jeff Johns or bust. So after he left the book, I was like, I don't really feel a reason to read Green Lantern anymore. So I don't know why this is. I don't know if this was explained in another series. I don't know why this is happening, but Sinestro is like really old in this. In fact, as I was reading this, and Sinestro is so old, and he's now got the Sinestro Corps running the entire universe, I was like, is this the far future? As I said, that was probably something that came up in another issue. That's probably something that happened in a recent issue of the actual Sinestro book, but I haven't been reading that, and you have to realize a lot of people who are going to pick up this issue, they haven't been reading that as well. This is meant to be a jumping on point that explains where these characters are at the moment, and you explain what's going on with Hal Jordan, that's great, but if his big foe throughout this is going to be the Sinestro Corps, you kind of needed to explain what was going on with them as well. But as I said, that was the Rebirth one-shot. The first issue of its actual series is okay. It is a big bag of fine. Yeah, there's nothing really great in it, but nothing really flat out bad about it. Basically, Sinestro, now that they've fully conquered the galaxy and they've enforced order, they go, aha, now that we've enforced order, we must make sure that no one challenges us. So go out and spread fear among everyone. And I was like, oh, who saw this coming? Oh, wow. I think actually playing with the idea of the Sinestro Corps, maybe kind of sort of being semi-good guys, would have been a far more interesting thing to play out throughout the course of a couple of storylines and then have them turn evil. But no, it was just, bam, oh, we got it all? Cool. Evil time. Yeah, again, we all saw that coming. Okay, they're evil again. He's going to be fighting the Sinestro Corps. I love the Sinestro Corps, but yeah, this wasn't really the most interesting thing to do with them. I mean, if you look at the Green Lanterns book, starring Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, they're currently going up against the Red Lanterns, and they're actually doing new stuff with the Red Lanterns. They're coming up with new ideas and adding on to their mythology. This is just the Sinestro Corps going, we finally won, time to be evil again. Like, okay, fine. And mild spoiler alert, but I mean, it's called Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. And he was saying, I'm going to go out there and try and find what happened to the rest of the Green Lantern Corps. Very end of this issue, the Green Lantern Corps just pops back up into our solar system. Okay. Yeah, that seemed like something that you could, again, have built up to over the course of many issues. But, alright, fine. But even though I have those problems, nothing's really bad about this issue, just nothing's really great. Out of all the issues that I've reviewed in Rebirth so far, this one to me is the most, you can skip it. And it really pains me to say that about a Green Lantern book, because I love the Green Lantern Corps, I want all their books to be amazing. This one's just okay, but at the same time, I'm really enjoying the Green Lanterns book, so I got that. But okay, that's it for part 1 of my July books. If you want to see part 2 in which I talk about updates to all the books that premiered in June, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you want to see me talking about the first couple issues of those June books, I'll put those videos at the end of this, so make sure that you click on them. Also, make sure that you share these videos all around the web. It's the best way to help out this channel, and you guys have been doing that a lot lately. We recently hit 10,000 subscribers. That is huge. I thank every single person out there who has supported this channel. Thank you all so much. But for now, I'm just gonna say thank you guys for watching this video. Come back next time. Bye.